this is very unprecedented in American culture and American government, that he runs the risk of kind of going too far too fast, and there are already polls who are suggesting that his early moves in office have not been popular with the American people. And so if he keeps going, that really could hurt Republicans in the midterm.
In America, Donald Trump has run into trouble in the courts. A judge has halted his order to freeze hundreds of billions of dollars in grants and loans for healthcare, foreign aid, and research. One effect of the freeze had been that online services for Medicaid, healthcare insurance for poor people, were shut down. The president's new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said the pause in funding would allow governments to cut back spending for woke gender issues and diversity programs. But they've cut everything. They've paused absolutely all forms of spending while they do that. And the court is being asked to say whether that is legal or not. More about Caroline Leavitt shortly, but I spoke to Daniel Lippman of the White House and Washington reporter for Politico. He told us that Donald Trump's administration hadn't necessarily anticipated that the freeze would have such widespread effects.
They did not realize how much money is at stake, and also that these have wide ramifications. And so, just because the government can do a review, that doesn't mean that there aren't people in Africa or the Middle East that might really need the money before the review is over. And so,
okay, so they've blocked it while they're doing a review. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, the idea was, hey, they should. They're in charge now. They should know what is happening to the money that the federal government is spending, and that they would, do this halt for 90 days and then all figure it out. The issue is that they have a lot of grant recipients and Americans who are reliant on these programs and on money, who are not LGBT, they're not transgender people, they're just regular citizens of either America or the world, who need help, and that there's a reason that they were getting this money in the first place, and that you can't just do this and then you'd have to fire or furlough hundreds of people. And so I think they're learning that government is not just a video game.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it. And so a judge has stepped in.
Yeah, a judge has, which I'm sure Trump was very happy with.
Yeah.
They've stepped in to at least temporarily halt this freeze in federal spending, but we'll have to see how much the judge is actually followed by Donald Trump, because he has shown that he's not really that particularly interested in following the law and following what a certain judge says.
And does he have the power to ignore a judge? I mean, explain the power. So he's got the power of executive order in America, Donald Trump. Has he the ability, as the President of the United States, to say, I want, and this is what his supporters will want to hear, I want to control federal spending. I think federal spending, both domestically and abroad, is too high. I think it goes to the wrong causes. I want to stop it, and I'm going to stop it now. Does he have the power to do that? So he seems to be exerting his executive power and ignoring Congress and the Supreme Court with TikTok, where the other branches of the government have said, hey, TikTok should be banned. And he has said, oh, actually, let's just keep it online. And his supporters and many Americans did not want TikTok to be banned. We saw that with Facebook as well. And so that's almost a case where you have the executive branch overruling the other parts of the government. And so, or he has said that presidents should have the ability to ignore Congress on budgetary matters. And so, of course, Congress is not very happy at that. But I think that we're kind of still waiting to see how he will use his executive power in terms of spending. And, he does show he respects the Supreme Court when they make their rulings. And so I think there's a lot of Americans who wanted to keep TikTok. And so he could view that as, hey, this is
he was just going along with the American people.
Yeah. So populism, it's the very definition of populism, sort of vox populi, the idea that if the people want it, it doesn't matter what the institutions think. But when it comes to this federal money, you think he does have the power to do it, or at least believes he has the power to do it?
Yeah, I think it's, there's ways to interpret that as saying, hey, you're allowed to get rid of, or you're allowed to pause money temporarily. He's not saying he can, that he would go away forever in terms of this federal spending. And so I think that he's on healthier legal ground there, but this is very unprecedented in American culture, in American government, that he runs the risk of kind of going too far too fast, and there are already polls who are suggesting that his early moves in office have not been popular with the American people, and so if he keeps going, that really could hurt Republicans in the midterms.
What do you make of Caroline Levitt? She's the 27-year-old new press secretary. She said she's going to invite bloggers, podcasters and influencers to apply to access to the administration to come to the White House press briefings. It was her first performance yesterday. What did you make of it?
I think she did, the best that she could. We'll have to see how long she actually continues these briefings, because if she just has these once a week, then that's not something that will be very useful to the press. And she didn't call on a lot of every mainstream media member there, and so I think that what was kind of funny about her job is that she was actually, there's usually one office in the press office in the White House, which is given to the press secretary, and yet she was denied that office with a fireplace. Instead, she got a smaller office, and another colleague who's a little older than her, but not really on camera as much. He got the better office. And so we'll have to see how much sway she has with the president, whether she actually can retain her credibility and not lie to the American people.
And once a week is by your standards not as much as you'd expect from a White House press person.
Usually they do 4 or 5 times a week, and so this is the early going. We'll see if how often she does it and whether she actually answers questions and acts in a way that befit, that would be normal for other press secretaries.
Yeah, the question of what the new normal is in Washington is an interesting one. That was Daniel Lippman, the White House and Washington reporter for Politico. And there's a point here that's relevant to the question we're having about long-form interviews, because he said Donald Trump is going to allow podcasters and influencers into the White House press briefing. And several people have got in touch to say long-form interviews exist. They exist on podcasts and on YouTube. But what strikes me about those, they are friendly long-form interviews. So Joe Rogan doing Trump. Yeah. Joe Rogan didn't do Kamala Harris. Joe Rogan did Trump. Someone talks about YouTube channels where it's people who believe a certain thing, and they have they have guests who believe a certain thing, the presenter believes a certain thing, and therefore it's a long-form exploration. Or it's like that business one with the guy in the black T-shirt. They're seen as a place to go to have a sort of slightly comfortable conversation. And maybe people want that. Maybe people want their tribe talking comfortably over a long period to someone else in their tribe, and I can understand that. If I'm a Forest fan, I might want to listen to a Forest podcast. Yeah. And maybe that's true of politics. If I'm a Reform person or a Labour person, I might want a long-form chat that just covers those issues in that way.
I mean, some of it has got to do with the distrust of the so-called mainstream media as well, isn't it? This idea that, the mainstream media are impartial, because, now obviously some people doubt that. Yeah. Whereas before, perhaps fewer may have doubted it. And I'm not saying, it's true, it's not true, whatever, but that's definitely got something to do with it.
I also think that impartiality can also become antagonism really easily, and we've struggled with this over the last 5 years. That if you're impartial, it means you can't accept everything at face value, and you have to prod and poke. And if you have people who come at you with well-rehearsed, often distorted, platitudinous, kind of phatic nothings, it becomes more confrontational. But that in some way, people's minds, I think, listeners say, I don't want confrontation, and therefore it makes the situation worse. So you look at a long-form interview on the mainstream media, and it looks like a tear-up. And people don't want that. And so they go to see their friends, their friends talking to their other friends, and think, well, that's a better way of doing it. And maybe to a certain extent, it can be in people's minds. But your views anyway, 0333 003 235. A listener raised the question, are long-form political interviews a matter of history except on new formats?